Welcome to Rambam in Depth. Today we'll be discussing the Rambam Hilchos and Hedrin, Perik Shleisha Asar, Halacha Aleph. The Rambam here talks about the whole process of convicting someone of a capital crime. Someone who was convicted of a capital crime would be taken out of the court, and the Rambam continues until he talks about who would actually do the execution. So later on in the halacha, the Rambam says that it would be the witnesses that would actually do the execution. The witnesses would be the ones who would kill the accused, whichever death penalty the person incurred. So the question is an interesting question that's asked by the Chemdas Yisrael and others. There's a din of Edom Zaymimin. If witnesses are perjured, how are they perjured? Two witnesses come and testify, let's say that Reuven killed Shimon, and they say where he was killed and when he was killed, when he was murdered. And another two witnesses come along and said, how could you testify that you saw this murder happening in this and this place at this and this time when you were with us in another city far away at the very same time? So the Torah says that we believe the second group of witnesses. That's called Edom Zaymim, perjured witnesses. Now, there's a halacha the Gemara discusses based on the words of the Torah. The Torah says, if you do to him, the witnesses who are perjured, whatever they conspire to do to their brother. In other words, the witnesses that are perjured, they wanted to give Reuven, who they accused of killing Shimon, the death penalty. They get the death penalty. However, the Gemara says, what happens if the death penalty was actually carried out? Now, it wasn't just a conspiracy, not only an attempt to do it, but the person was convicted on the basis of their false testimony and executed. Then the witnesses do not get the death penalty. It's a very novel teaching. It's counterintuitive, but that's the halacha, because it says, kasher zamam, they do to them as they conspired, as they sought to do to their fellow, not kasher asa, not what they actually did. So the question is asked, true, you can't give them the death penalty because they are actually carried out, their testimony was actually carried out, but since the witnesses have to carry out the death penalty, as we just learned in the Rambam, so the witnesses who are now considered to be false witnesses actually committed murder because they killed the accused. So true, they can't be given the death penalty because of the din of Edom Zaymimin, perjured witnesses, but why can't they be given the death penalty? Because they committed murder. So the Chemdas Yisrael gives a very simple answer. He says there's a halacha that whenever there's accusation of a capital crime, you only get the punishment if there was hasra, there was warning beforehand. There was an exception to that rule. Edom Zaymimin, you can't warn them before they commit the crime because the crime is a false testimony. Who's going to warn them? So that's a halacha that you don't need hasra, you don't need warning for the Edom Zaymimin. When does that apply? When you're talking about Edom Zaymimin, they're getting the death penalty because of what they conspired. So if they already carried it out, there's no death penalty. But what happens if they actually committed the actual murder? That is something that requires hasra. They have to be warned because there's no din, chiddush by Edom Zaymimin that you don't need hasra. Murder is a general crime that requires hasra. Since there was no hasra, they can't get the death penalty. But another answer is given by the Sefer Siach Yitzchak, by the son of the Maratz Chayis, famous Achron in the 19th century, and he says the following: the whole din of believing the second group of witnesses over the first group is a chiddush, is a novelty. Why should we believe the second group over the first group? The Torah says that's how we do it. So when do we have that apply? When you're dealing with a din of Edom Zaymimin, when you're dealing with a din of falsifying the testimony of the witnesses, that we believe the second group over the first group. But logically, there's no reason to believe the second over the first. So when it comes to the din of Edom Zaymimin, there's a gzeras hakasav, there's a scriptural decree, there's a novel decree that the Torah says, for reasons that we don't understand, that you believe the second group. But that when it comes to murder, that's a crime for which there is no such chiddush. You can't apply a novel idea that's used in one place for another place. And therefore, when they testified and they not only they testified, but they actually carried out the death penalty, there you have to apply the general rule and the logic that says that one group is not more believed than the other group. So why should we believe the second group, believe the first group? Since we don't know which group to believe, you can't give the death penalty because maybe they're telling the truth. And therefore, there is no death penalty for what they committed, the Ritzicha that they committed, because it's only considered Ritzicha legabi the din of Edom Zaymamin, but the legabi the din of Ritzeach, we have no certainty that they actually committed a crime, and therefore there's no Chiyuv Misa for committing the crime of Ritzicha. U'Mesaymin b'Teiv.